Among the two other Marvel movies at the time, being Blade and Howard the Duck, the third Marvel movie to release was the 2000 X-Men movie. This film, alongside Blade and Spider-Man, are given the title of jumpstarting the proclaimed Marvel Cinematic Universe and introducing these characters to the world, which would eventually lead to the creation of the MCU. There has been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 13 X-Men movies, all of varying quality to say the least. However, for the sake of today's video, we are going to be focusing on the original X-Men film. X-Men 1 is such a fascinating movie. I think since Spider-Man 2002, superhero movies have followed its formula of an origin story and overcoming the villain who's sort of been alongside them the whole journey. But X-Men 2000 obviously didn't have that structure. This film has a lot of characters to introduce and not a lot of time to properly develop them all. It's not a bad movie. I'd honestly say it's probably one of the better X-Men movies. And of course, for any marketable film of the early 2000s, there was money to be made through the medium of action figures. The first X-Men movie had a plentiful assortment of merchandise from Toy Biz, who had the Marvel movie license. There was surprisingly a dominant focus on the 6-inch figures as opposed to other sizes or variations. Like yes, there were 10-inch figures and playsets, but most of the figures involved 6-inch figures. But speaking of the playsets, let's start with those first. In no particular order, we have Wolverine's X-Cycle, the X-Jet, Magneto's Mutant Machine, and the Lady Liberty playset. Obviously, you have a Wolverine and a bike, so that's like no surprise. There was the X-Jet, which actually fit the 6-inch figures, so this thing had to be pretty big. Then there's the Mutant Machine, which is Magneto's main plan at the end of the film, so it would make sense why they would make it. Then we have the Lady Liberty head, which clearly is a bust of the Statue of Liberty, which is where the final battle takes place. I saved this one for last because when No Way Home came out, I remember seeing people use this playset for their display of the final battle, which did look pretty cool. But now let's move on to the actual 6-inch figures. There were 2 series of figures, and then various re-releases in 2-packs or big team sets, but I'll just go over the 2 main series. Series 1 had 11 figures. Oh, okay. Logan, Storm, Magneto, Rogue, Professor X, Toad, Wolverine, Sabretooth, Cyclops, Jean Grey, and Mystique. You basically got every main character from the film, which is pretty cool. Something really interesting about this first wave is that there were a couple different variants of these figures, with some very interesting changes, to say the least. Then we have Series 2, which I think came out after the film, as these figures have more scene-specific outfits and accessories. In Series 2, there was Logan wearing a denim jacket, which he does this only for one scene in the movie. Sabretooth with snow all over him from when he gets jumped in the woods. Cyclops wearing civilian clothing from the train station scene. Professor X with his plastic wheelchair so he can visit Magneto in his plastic prison. Toad without the jacket, I guess. And Rogue from the part of the movie where she tries to run away. Something interesting about this specific Rogue figure is that she's actually wearing the X-Men uniform. It's commendable to see Toy Biz release so many prominent characters from the film, because as the years go on and they make figures for the other films, it would be less common to see so many new characters as opposed to remaking the same 1 or 2 characters for a wave, or for some to only get 1 figure. I've actually got a handful of these early X-Men figures, all of varying quality, so let's just start the reviews right now. For our first review, here we have Professor X, the creator of the X-Men team and the headmaster of Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. Now this release of Charles is from the second wave, where he's using a plastic chair so he can visit Magneto. The other version has his normal chair with Cerebro, but I don't have that version. But still, this figure is pretty neat. Let's start with Charles himself, who's wearing a gray suit, which is sort of movie accurate. The scene in the movie makes it look a lot darker gray than this figure. He has a basic range of movement, but something really funny are his legs. Obviously, Professor X can't walk nor stand, and this figure ensures that. His legs are so loose that he legit cannot stand, even if you wanted him to. Talk about accuracy. His legs have a knee joint, so he sits easily, and his arms move at both the elbow and hand. Lastly, we have the face, which I wouldn't say looks like Patrick Stewart, but definitely passes as a Professor X, if that makes any sense. The head also moves all around. Moving on from the figure, we have the wheelchair. Like I said, this specific figure references his appearance from the end of the film where he visits Magneto, so his chair had to be remade in plastic, both in the film and for this figure, obviously. The chair is clear, so it doesn't hide anything. Comparing this chair to the original release, the only difference aside from color is that this figure has all new wheels to remove the X symbol. A weird thing is that on the back of the chair there's this silver piece that to my knowledge doesn't do anything. It's on every release of Professor X's chair, so maybe it's just a remnant of the motorized feature. A final note before moving on to his accessory is that this figure has 2 holes in his back to plug into the chair. I guess so he sits up nice and straight. Now like I said, there is an accessory, but not for the figure. These Series 2 figures come with dog tags, for you, or for your figure, I guess. The tags have a corresponding name for the figure they're attached to, and as you can see it says Professor X with the X symbol, so that's pretty cool. Next up is the leader of the X-Men and the most disrespected character in the trilogy. This is Cyclops, in disguise. Towards the end of the movie, Rogue runs away and the team looks around the area trying to find her. Cyclops wears a more casual outfit to fit in with the other people at the station. Compared to the scene in the movie, he looks accurate. He has simple articulation at the elbows, legs, knees, and torso. His hands don't move and I think are a bit too large for some reason. I'm not sure what the one fist, one open hand means. It's not like he could touch his visor or anything. Speaking of the visor, it actually comes off, giving you this. Yeah, I'll just put those back on. Same as Professor X, his head can move 360. However, unlike Professor X, this guy actually has a cool feature. On the top of his head is a red, clear plastic piece that, if you shine a light through, makes his eyes light up, and therefore his visor. He also came with a dog tag thing, but I don't have it. But besides that, it's a neat figure from the film. Thumbs up. Following that is Logan in his more casual attire. This specific outfit is when he's not wearing the brown jacket and instead has a blue denim jacket. A very specific look, but I guess they had to make a new Wolverine for the wave. Besides that, this is a pretty basic figure. He's got knee and foot movement along with forward kicks. He does have a waist swivel, but it's ratcheted due to his play feature, but I'll get more into that at the end. Obviously, he's wearing a jacket, but he does have a big ball joint shoulder, and beneath the sleeve is an elbow joint. And finally, we have the head sculpt. that honestly I think looks fairly good. It's obviously not the most beautiful likeness, but for what it's worth, it's not bad. Before going to the play feature, I want to quickly talk about his claws. They're glued in on top of his hand, and I mean, they look fine. Mine are a bit warped, probably due to like the packaging and just time, I guess. The play feature is pretty standard. On his back, there's an extended notch that when you slide back and forth, his arms strike depending on the position you start them in. Pretty cool. Also, he comes with a Wolverine dog tag. For our next spotlight, this is Mystique. With a very prominent role in the films until she's cured and abandoned, this is Mystique from the first film, stuck in this stance, but it is tied to her play feature. Starting off with the figure itself, it's not great. Raven does have some articulation, but to show everything, she has short knee rotation, upper leg swivel, head swivel, hand rotation, and full arm movement. You can see that she has a torso movement, but it's sort of tied to the play feature and it doesn't really stay in place if you move it. Despite the strange articulation, this figure has incredible detail, making her pretty accurate to the film. And as for the head sculpt, I think it's fine. Now, like I said, there is a reason for why her articulation scheme is like this. During the Battle of the Statue of Liberty, Mystique morphs into Wolverine and the fight turns into a Wolverine versus Wolverine. This figure gives you a Wolverine skin sack thing to put Mystique into in order to recreate this scene. This skin sack thing is really gooey and sticky, but aside from those aspects, it actually has some nice suit details, and obviously has a gorgeous face sculpt. Now, getting the figure into the suit was kind of challenging, as her limbs are in distinct positions, so you had to like mold the suit around her. I think it took me like 15 minutes to get it on her. The suit, at least mine, I don't know if I just ripped it apart by accident, breaks into 3 pieces. There is the upper torso with the arms and head, the gloves come off, and then the bottom half with the legs and shoes. With the suit on, it it looks probably just as you'd expect it to. Mystique Logan looks goofy, but like in a good way. Yes, it's not great, but I mean, I don't know, it's a fun gimmick. A for effort. Overall, I think this figure is a fun way of showcasing Mystique's ability in action figure form, but definitely is a product of its time in relation to both articulation and and the gimmick. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, Toy Biz released many different versions of their figures, and in this case, in 2-packs. For this spotlight, we have the Wolverine vs. Sabretooth 2-pack, which gives you Sabretooth and Wolverine in his X-Men uniform. To my knowledge, these specific figures and their gimmick are exclusive to this 2-pack release, as the single releases are a bit different. The 2-pack gave you Wolverine and Sabretooth from the final battle on the top of the Statue of Liberty. Let's start with Sabretooth. Sabretooth has decent articulation with foot hinges, knee joint, ratcheted shoulder movement, elbow joint, and hand swivels. He also has a torso swivel, but it's pretty limited. Then we move on to the face, which looks pretty goofy. His face is made of a rubber material, which is related to his action feature. On his back, there's a switch that, when pushed down, sort of moves his mouth up and down. Yeah, this figure isn't great. I think on his own, he's not the best, but just standing there, maybe alongside Magneto or just some other villains, he works just fine. But now we move on to his 2-pack comrade, Wolverine. Starting with the suit, I think it actually has a great amount of detail. As for articulation, he basically has the same as Sabretooth. Foot and leg movement, glove, elbow, and shoulder movement, with a better waist movement. However, his left arm is ratcheted due to his play feature that I will talk about at the end. And now we arrive at the face, which looks pretty bad. The head is made of the same gooey material as the skin suit, which is a little weird because Sabretooth's face is made of rubber. Regardless, I think this head looks pretty bad, and it has a play feature of its own. On his back, Logan has a lever that, when pulled, shifts his face forward. I guess it's to show that he's angry or something, but it just looks silly. Also, due to this feature, his head cannot move, so the poor soul is forced to stare forward, or slightly down sometimes. Like I alluded to, there is another feature. Going back to his back, his waist has a notch that, when moved, makes him strike his arm up or down. Overall, this 2-pack is fine. It's obviously an accurate scene, and there is great detail in these sculpts. Things fall flat regarding the face sculpts, which were sacrificed for their play features, which inherently aren't really that cool to begin with. The next 2-pack recreates the sequence from the film where Magneto takes down Logan in the train in order to take Rogue. Unlike the previous 2-pack, this set reuses Magneto from his single release, or at least is very similar to it, but does contain an exclusive version of Logan. So let's start with him. Okay, I need to say this first. Yes, my figure is missing an arm. Unfortunately, there was a loss. And that's all I gotta say. My bad. This Logan recreates his casual look from the movie with his black jacket. This jacket is more black than brown, but does have faint green weathering on it. Also, the red shirt underneath is solid red, as opposed to being a more plaid design. Moving away from accuracy, let's take a look at the actual figure. He has basic leg articulation, no waist movement, no arm movement, aside from the shoulder, and his head can swivel all around. His arm movement is attached to this spring thing, which is tied to the action feature. Also, his claws are able to be pushed back in, and when the arm moves, they strike back out. Moving on to the head, there really is no likeness here, but interestingly, he has red eyes. It's quite sinister. In the end, this figure is kind of boring. It's got some nice detail, but does have inaccuracies and is honestly a glorified accessory to the playset. But before we look at the playset, we did get Magneto, which I think is pretty cool looking. Like I said, I believe this figure is a slightly modified version of the single release of Magneto in Wave 1. This Magneto has a big soft goods cloak, which is pretty cool. Beneath the cloak, he has the basic articulation with leg, knee, and foot movement. He also has a full waist swivel. Eric's arms move all around with elbow joints and hand swivels, and since the cape is cloth, there's no limitation. His hands are in two different motions. One is a fist and the other is open, I guess in the motion of using his powers. His outfit is quite bland, being this all black suit. He also has this half skirt thing and half a belt, but this is all pretty accurate, except for the belt. And there was also detail on his legs and foot, this silver outline thing, I guess. And finally, we go to the head, which doesn't have an Ian McKellen likeness, instead just sort of looks like an old man. I will say, the hair does have a gray and white accent that looks nice. Aside from the large accessory, Magneto comes with a small one of his own, being his helmet, to protect his mind from psychic mutants. The accessory is this magenta, soft plastic headpiece that is a nice inclusion. Again, this is just taken over from the single release. It easily slides onto his head, and I don't think it even looks that bad. And finally, we have the big playset accessory, being a piece of the train station, which isn't movie accurate as the scene actually takes place inside the train. So instead, we get the area outside the train and this big departing train sign. There's an action feature built in where you put Logan into these pegs, and Magneto steps on the pressure plate to launch him. And just like that, that concludes all the Toy Biz figures that I have, and I hope my comments didn't come across as too cynical, because I know there are people out there who have nostalgic attachment to these figures. I think since I didn't grow up with figures like these, my ideal action figure has a lot more features than Toy Biz was creating during this time. These figures are 24 years old, which is pretty nuts. It's no secret, and as I showed, these figures do have some great detail, but fall flat on the action figure side of the offering. Obviously, head sculpts weren't going to be spectacular, but as Toy Biz would continue to make movie figures and face sculpts, they just got better and better. These original X-Men figures would be cycled out, and more favorable versions of these characters would be next. However, this is not the end of the story for the first X-Men movie. X-Men 1 came out in 2000, and after the initial marketing campaign for that film, there weren't any more figures being made for that specific movie, as there was new media involving those characters, such as the sequel, X-Men 2. Toy Biz would not return to X-Men 2000, and after they closed down and rights went to Hasbro, instead they would opt to create figures for the then upcoming X-Men movies. But there were some exceptions. During the release for X-Men Origins Wolverine, Hasbro actually made some X-Men Trilogy 2-packs, featuring characters and designs from the first 3 films. There were only 2 sets released, Cyclops and Colossus, Wolverine and Beast. These 2-packs, while branded under the Origins packaging, are also labeled as the X-Men Trilogy. I actually have 3 of the 4 and would do a review, but this video is getting pretty long and we've got some other figures to look at. I mean, I technically have 2 more movies to go over as well. So, moving forward, in 2020 for the 20th anniversary of X-Men, Hasbro's Marvel Legends division released a bunch of X-Men movie products to celebrate. I won't go over every single release as a couple of them are spoilers for a future video. I will go over the related figures for this first film. For the 20th anniversary of the movie, Marvel Legends gave us the Magneto and Professor X 2-pack with likenesses to both the original actors and the young actors, Mystique, and Leather Jacket Wolverine. These figures were released within the last decade and demonstrate the large 20-year difference in technological advancements for these characters, and I just happen to have them all. I'm pretty sure this is the first review of a Marvel Legends on the channel. Well, that award goes to this 2-pack of Professor X and Magneto. A really cool offering, giving you 2 of the best characters from the trilogy. Let's start with Professor X. Wearing his more iconic blue suit, that makes this a great representation from the film. Taking him out of the chair, this is that crappy suited body mold, so it's a bit difficult to get him to stand, but thankfully Professor X doesn't need to stand. But for the articulation, he has the basic Marvel Legends male character movements, full leg articulations, and now with handy thigh cuts, full arm articulations, and even a waist swivel. He does have an ab crunch, but it's hindered by the plastic suit overlay. This figure comes with two head sculpts for Xavier, representing the two actors, Patrick Stewart from the original trilogy, and James McAvoy from the prequel trilogy, or alternative timeline, whatever you want to call it. Starting with the Patrick Stewart sculpt, and I mean, that looks pretty good. Comparing the head sculpt to the old Toy Biz one, and yeah, that's an improvement. As for the James McAvoy head, it also looks fantastic. I may be in a minority for this, but a head sculpt for the James McAvoy version with hair would have been a cool bonus. This figure comes with one set of energy sending hands, and palms, I guess, one mind reading hand, a gun holding hand, and a relaxed hand. A great assortment of hands. The final accessory is his wheelchair. This is just a straight up wheelchair, and not the actual Professor X chair. Another figure in this 20th anniversary wave is the Logan movie 2-pack, which also features this same wheelchair, so I'm pretty sure it's just reuse. A bit disappointing that it's not his big fancy X chair, but whatever. Side note, if you have the original Professor X, he can sit fairly well in his chair, so you technically could get Professor X in his movie chair. Next up is Magneto, which I definitely think is the standout figure in this 2-pack. The suit is from Past Eric's suit from Days of Future Past, was definitely the best decision. It's not an overly complicated suit, so they captured all the details. To quickly go over articulation, he has the same arm articulation as Professor X, with bicep and hand swivels, but his shoulders are a bit limited due to his cape, but it does pop out fairly easily, so I think it ultimately won't really hinder that much. He's got leg movement with thigh and knee movement, but now with the addition of a boot swivel. As for the torso, he doesn't have a waist swivel and only has an upper diaphragm cut. Now moving on to the heads, plural. This figure comes with 4 alternate heads, each representing the 2 different versions of Magneto, both unmasked and wearing the helmet. Starting with Ian McKellen, I think it looks pretty good. Then we also get a helmeted version, which I think looks great as well. The 20-year difference for this guy is insane. For the younger Magneto, Michael Fassbender's iteration, I think has the weaker likeness. I'm not saying it's bad, but I think the McKellen likeness is just stronger. Honestly, the version with the helmet looks more like Fassbender, especially from the end of Days of Future Past. Magneto doesn't get as many hands as Charles, but does get 2 full sets of hands, 2 open power magnetic hands, and 2 fists. This 2-pack, I think, still stands as a pretty great offering of arguably the best parts of that original film. The quantity of variation it provides with the young and older versions is really cool. Comparing these two to their Toy Biz counterparts just comes to show how much 20 years have accomplished in relation to action figures. And specifically for these 2 characters. Our next Marvel Legends is Mystique from the 20th Anniversary Collection. First of all, this is a massive upgrade from the original 2000 Mystique figure. Like the original release, she has incredible detail recreating her design from the movie. As for articulation, she has a fair amount, as Marvel Legends only recently created a more articulate female body mold. Someone like Mystique I think deserves a much more flexible mold to create her more dynamic poses. Regardless, Raven has full leg movements, thigh, knee, and foot. For her arms, she has the shoulder rotation, a single jointed arm, with hand rotation. She doesn't have a waist swivel, but she does have an upper diaphragm movement, so you can get articulation in the torso. Last but not least, we have the head, which is fantastic. There's a strong likeness to Rebecca Romijn Stamos from X-Men 1, and the Marvel Legends team did a great job. Included with this figure are two sets of hands, fists and relaxed. And you also get an alternate arm, obviously referencing her disguising ability. Her right arm pops out, allowing for a fairly easy swap, and yeah, that's neat. I think maybe to get the most of both films, perhaps a Jennifer Lawrence face sculpt to act as the hidden Mystique, it could have been a cool bonus. This Mystique figure is another great offering from the 20th anniversary line. I'm happy they made Mystique, and I think she definitely needed the updated treatment. But a new Jean Grey or Storm would have also been really cool. It's great to see that the two major villains from that first movie and also the trilogy have been upgraded with modern day action figure technology. The final figure that we're looking at for this first film is Logan, wearing his signature leather jacket. You know, it's weird. I think this outfit is more synonymous with these films than the actual given X-Men uniforms. This figure has some pretty great detail, and is really accurate to his outfit from the trilogy. For articulation, he has all the basic movements for a Marvel Legends figure: double jointed legs with ankle movement, double jointed arms, bicep swivel, an ab crunch, and a waist swivel. His jacket piece only covers his torso, and his arms are sculpted with the jacket-like design on them, so no articulation is hindered since the jacket isn't all one big piece. For the head sculpts, we get two options, both with a great likeness to Hugh Jackman, though I think the Screaming one looks just a little bit off. So moving on to the accessories, we get two sets of hands, two fists, and two claw hands. A pretty good assortment for a Wolverine. Comparing this Logan to the Toy Biz ones, and yeah, that's looking pretty wild. Like I said during the other review, the jacket is more brown as opposed to the darker shade that the Toy Biz figure went with, and the Marvel Legends I think captures the much more accurate design of Logan in this outfit. As I conclude, I think this figure is pretty cool. This look for a casual attire Logan, whether he's on the run or just relaxing around the mansion, definitely makes for a nice representation of Logan from the original X-Men film. The legacy of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is something that will forever be remembered with the likes of Endgame, Infinity War, Iron Man, but none of them would have even been possible if not for the success of the early 2000 films, such as X-Men. The prevalent X-Men Cinematic Universe went on for almost 20 years on its own, granted with debatable quality, but it's commendable to see such a powerful franchise, both related and unrelated, spawn from this first film. The growth and development of Marvel movies and how over time they got more advanced and thematically better also applies to how Toy Biz movie figures got better over time. These old X-Men figures definitely show their age in both design and mold, with limited articulation and basic gimmicks. They aren't great figures, and as time progressed, Toy Biz improved and made some movie figures that still hold up today. I think programs like that Marvel Legends 20th Anniversary line demonstrated that improvement, not just for Toy Biz but for movie figures over the decades. This film, and specifically Hugh Jackman's portrayal of Wolverine, has spanned decades as the on-screen representation of Wolverine, and for a long time he, alongside the other X-Men, were stuck with these older, outdated figures. Among many reasons, the upcoming Deadpool and Wolverine movie is an extremely exciting film, both for its narrative and the back and forth between Deadpool and Wolverine, but also for the chance for Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, alongside any other possible surprises, to get new representation in action figure form, and maybe for some, the last time to get one. Thankfully, some of the major breakout characters have had more recent releases, but some are stuck in this original wave. Like I said, maybe one day we'll get another big legacy anniversary special or whatever, or by some miracle they'll show up in some new project. But for now, these original X-Men 2000 figures aren't the best in today's standards, but represent the early days of both Marvel movies and Toy Biz's evolution of movie figures. And the Marvel Legends Anniversary figures demonstrate how much a 20-year difference truly makes. That's such a sweet and wholesome ending. Okay, the video's over. Go home.